think every 10 years you need a seismic shift in your business model or your way of thinking. Have a distinct message. If people trust you, they want to deal with you. I feel there's more for us to do and better things for us to do to give people a great experience. Be true to yourself, but try and have an identity, because otherwise how are you going to stand out in the crowd?
You know, these chairs that you designed have actually changed London Real.
And we don't want to have 500 stores, that's not the goal. We want to have 50 really, really good stores. If we're going to make stuff, I want to make great stuff, and I want to make epic stuff, and I want it to come out and slap you in the face. I don't want to be just another furniture manufacturer. And we don't actually even see it as furniture, we see it beyond that.
If you've been a fan of London Real for a long time, then you'll realize that over the last year, we've stepped our game up. We've changed the way we look in both clothes and in the studio. And if you watch us now, you'll see a sterling silver British bulldog that we call Winston. You'll see these beautiful modern leather chairs. You'll see these huge sails with the Union Jack draped over our windows. You'll see fascinating ornaments in the studio, and they're all thanks to this man who is on the show today, Mr. Timothy Oulton. And it's a funny story, and I'll leave it more for the show, but we were redesigning our studio because we were stepping up our game, because that's what we do here at London Real. And I was looking for a classic English gentleman's vibe meets Shoreditch trendy cool, because that's where we are in Shoreditch. I'm here in Hoxton Square in the center of it all. And I was looking around, and I went to Harrods on a whim because I wanted to find some old man chairs, and I walked in and I was hit with Timothy Oulton, and I was so impressed with his stuff. I pitched him right there, because that's also what we do at London Real, and I said, it's your lucky day. We're redesigning our studio, and you can feature your ornaments here. And they took us up on the deal, and they gave us all this beautiful stuff, and I finally got to interview and speak to the man who created it all. And Timothy's a fascinating man, really a guy that never went to university, but has this business smarts, this entrepreneur spirit you can feel from his gut. He was also really raised by Benedictine monks here in Britain, and they gave him this sense of community. And he said to me in the show, he said, Brian, they always told me that you have to contribute something, whether it's sports or whether it's cooking or whether it's the arts or sciences, but you have to do it in a spirit of contributing. And that's one of the most powerful things I got from Timothy. That and the way he stays on brand, concentrates on creating something unique. And any artist out there watching this, or any entrepreneur for that matter, can take that lesson from Timothy Oulton. And it's a great episode, and it really means a lot to me because it's who we are and it's part of our brand. And we are London Real. And as American as I am, I'm also British. And the feel of me and the feel of our studio is shown in the space that you see this conversation take place. And the final thing that Timothy taught me is that your environment is such an important thing because it really contributes to the spirit and who you are and how you entertain and how you interact with people. And I hope that when someone walks into London Real Studios, I actually know this, that when guests arrive, they're like, wow, okay, these guys are serious, this is special, and this is a place I can open up, let go, and tell the real truth about what's happening. So there you go, Mr. Timothy Oulton is here. And you know, the set is not the only thing that's changed at London Real in the last year. We've created this community called the Academy. And a lot of people said, Brian, what is it all about? Well, it's 1,000 of the hardest core London Realers from around the world. We get together online and in person, and we build better versions of ourselves. We hold each other accountable to do the things we don't want to do to get to where we want to go. And it's pretty much that simple. But it's about upgrading your peer group and really having a community. We have online coursework, we have our own private social network, we have live webinars, we have a business accelerator course, we have a how to do a TED Talk course. We've got meetups here in London at the studio. You can come, smell the leather, meet Winston the Bulldog, brought to you by Timothy Oulton. And you know, I want to hear your story. I want to know how we can help. And so I put together a video a little bit about it, so check it out.
The entrepreneurial journey, it can be a lonely road. I push myself in so many areas, but you know, you can't do it all yourself.
The thing about the Academy is, it's like, look, you have the ideas, you have the ability, you have the skill, and you have the sort of ambition for yourself. But when you have a group of people pulling you forward, it's so important.
Accountability is what's missing from most of the programs or any gurus or any internet mentor that I had before.
I wanted to get some accountability. I wanted to make myself accountable to a group, to you.
The reason we started the Academy is because I felt like we were doing these amazing talks, like we'd have a Peter Sage episode or a Dan Pena episode or a Kala or someone, and you get super inspired, and then YouTube stops, and then you go back to your life and you don't make any changes. And it was just like, it felt like, what are we doing? If you're designing your life right, the good times are now. And in a few years, you'll look back and say, wow, that was amazing.
The thing about the Academy is it has so many different sort of layers to it. I think your web seminars are awesome. The way you broke it down and the style of your teaching is pretty awesome.
I like the feed. When I have to motivate myself, I kind of look at others struggling and getting over those struggles. So I actually follow daily the feed.
Best feature would be the sort of Facebook aspect of it, the social media aspect of it, as in creating a profile with your goals, your dreams.
Everyone's on the same vibe, and we may be at different stages in our journeys, but everyone's on the same page at the end of the day. Everyone's really trying to push themselves and building the best you. It really resonates with me.
And the fact that I'm committing a small amount of money and the fact that I'm actually trying to interact with those people means that I'm invested and means that I will keep it for the long run.
You have to be serious about yourself and what you want to achieve. And if you're serious about yourself, this is going to be such a fantastic platform.
London Real, sponsored by Bulletproof. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Timothy Oulton, the quintessentially British furniture designer, founder and creative director of the Timothy Oulton brand. You left school at 18 wanting to be a banker, but reluctantly began working for the family business in antiques in Manchester. Over time, this turned into a passion, but you realized there was no future in antique restoration, so you created your own brand. Today, Timothy Oulton has scaled to an international level, supplying pieces to over 60 countries and operating showrooms in 30 different cities, including New York, Los Angeles, Moscow, Amsterdam, Hong Kong, and of course, here at Harrods in London, where I first saw your work. Timothy, welcome to London Real.
Thank you.
Do you like what we've done with the place?
Well, it's flipping marvellous, mate. It's like being home.
You know, these chairs that you designed have actually changed London Real, because we used to sit in office chairs, and now that these are back, I think that, you know, the more you get someone horizontal, it actually...
The better they're going to interview, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it turns you kind of into that laying down, talking to your therapist pose, where I really do think the more people kind of think and look up, they get more kind of introspective about their lives. So
Well, the space looks a lot better than it did before.
Yeah, it definitely does. Do you want to hear my Timothy Oulton story?
Yeah, exactly. I meant to ask you that.
Yeah, so you obviously, for people that know or don't know, you've designed all of these pieces, including Winston. We named the dog. I don't know if a lot of people name him that. People love Winston. We have the vertically mounted typewriters here.
You even got the typewriter.
Yeah, and in our workspace, all the details, a lot of these inspired pieces, you know, the traveling suitcases, the Spitfire, and you can tell me more about these pieces. But we were in the process of really stepping up our game at London Real. We were just talking earlier, we just hit our 4-year anniversary recently, and we were having these incredible conversations with these amazing people, and yet my set looked like, you know, an IKEA furniture, like, backyard sale. And, you know, it was very kind of male fraternity house design, which is what I've always been about. And so we thought, you know, we really should step up our game. And so we had a rough idea of what we wanted, but we knew nothing about set design, and we thought we wanted English Gentlemen's Club meets Shoreditch cool. And Shoreditch is the neighborhood we're in.
Yeah, not easy to do.
Not easy to do. You were outside, we got street art if you've ever been to Shoreditch. It's kind of like, in my opinion, what the East Village was like in the 90s in New York. Yep. You know, cool, used to be kind of squats here. There's artists, but there's also tech. There's also, you know, the city isn't far away. And so we were thinking English leather chairs, and we were trying to figure out what we could put on the walls, but we didn't know. But we were like literally in the middle of tearing it all apart. And I wanted to find, like I said, these leather chairs that you might find in a gentleman's club, things that look like old man chairs.
But trendy.
So I went to Harrods because I thought on the 4th floor of Harrods or wherever it is, I can find a classic English leather chair that's going to cost 10 grand, and I can take a picture and get an idea in my mind. And I went up, I think it's on the 3rd floor, maybe it's the 4th, and I walked into Timothy Oulton. And I was a bit surprised.
That's almost spooky, isn't it?
It was very spooky because, and I know this now working with your staff, you have a design for everything. The walls are black, there are typewriters mounted on the wall. There were this entire floor-to-ceiling book towers.
Pillars of knowledge, we call them.
Yeah, what's it called?
The pillars of knowledge.
Pillars of knowledge. It's like a 360-degree stack of books, floor to ceiling, that's maybe like 2 or 3 meters diameter. You had these huge spotlights that I think were used at the Suez Canal that were like literally like a meter in diameter. They must have weighed like a half a ton. I was like, I want one of those. And there were all of these really cool design pieces. I don't even think our set does justice as to how intricate, how bespoke, and each piece had a story. And I started talking to your staff, and I actually walked up to them and I said, this is your lucky day, because
this is what I was looking for.
Yeah, this is what I was looking for. I'm Brian Lewis from London Real, and we're redesigning our set, and you can be a part of it. And I think they called security and tried to get me thrown out. But no, they were a very, very amazing staff. They told me all of the stories. They were super accommodating. They put me in touch with your marketing people and the rest.
And they've all been to the factory, so.
Yeah, and I think they've actually won some awards, your staff in Harrods.
Yeah, they won that
right?
Best Service Award in Harrods,
In
which
Harrods,
is an amazing thing.
Which is an amazing
A furniture company's never got close to winning it.
Right, and I was in Harrods a few days ago, and everyone from a service point of view is really on top of their game. So that says a lot, you know.
Yeah, it's important for us
to have your people there. But I want to get your thoughts. Why was I attracted to these things? You know, when I saw these pieces, and we finally got the drapes in here, these chairs were just so perfect. Winston, and when people come in here, they're always like, okay, wow, this reminds me of something. It's kind of nostalgic, it's very British, but it's not antique. What are we feeling when we look at it?
Well, I think it was exactly what you were looking for, and that's what we try and do when we design products. It's not design per se. We don't call ourselves designers as such, although it is a creative process. You know, I dealt in antiques all my life, up until about 15 years ago, and I loved antiques, but there was no design element to me. To me, just buying an antique, refurbishing it, and selling it wasn't an interesting or creative process. It was very enjoyable. So when we started with reproduction furniture, going back 20 years, we said, let's borrow from the antique. Why wouldn't you? You know, 4,000 years of design out there. Why wouldn't you borrow from it? But let's make it interesting. So precisely looking for a customer like you. I didn't want to just sell antique copies. That didn't seem the right thing to do. So it's about making antiques relevant. Great finishes, great leather, all borrowed from the past, great chandeliers, but put them in an iron cage. Make them interesting. Make a young person want it. Because you go in an antique shop, even the nicest ones, they're pretty dull experiences because there's no point of view. And what we said, if we're going to make stuff. I want to make great stuff, and I want to make epic stuff, and I want it to come out and slap you in the face. I don't want to be just another furniture manufacturer. And we don't actually even see it as furniture. We see it beyond that. Now, maybe I think everyone says that. It's like being prejudiced. And you love your own kids, and everyone else's kids are horrible, aren't they? You know, snotty nose. Well, mine are beautiful. And we feel that about our furniture. We want it to be epic, and we want it to mean something, whatever that. You know, we're just getting into that kind of thought process now. What is it actually all? What are we doing it for? Why do we live in China, which is not an easy choice? So I think in answer to your question, yeah, we want to do antiques, borrowed from the past. A nod to nostalgia, why not? But we want it to be modern and relevant. That's the key thing. Otherwise, we don't think people, it's not interesting. It's just an antique copy. So it's got to be something more than that. Trendy antiques is if you really want to distill it.
Right.
But relevant for today.
And how do you make something relevant for today?
Flipping hell, that's the point, isn't it? Yeah, it's easy to say it. Doing it is another thing. You know, we took the aviator concept, which everyone's done a version of the aviator concept, but we were the first. And just turn it into relevant pieces of furniture like chest of drawers. We took a great Art Deco chair, then a great English classic leather chair, this one, and then just merge them into one. And I think putting the leather pad on top, this is called Mark III. There was a Mark I, Mark II, this is Mark III. And who knows what Mark IV will be.
And the leather pad on top does what?
Well, it just makes it more comfortable, doesn't it?
Right.
Otherwise it's a bit cold.
Right, and then it is really just Art Deco, and it's not.
And then it's not for sitting in.
Yeah.
And I want the stuff to be for sitting in. I don't want it to be just for looking at.
Talk about the experience, because I know you say a lot of these items are for people's homes or for places where people, congregate, and you want to talk about that experience. And it's not just a place to sit, but it's that whole feeling we have when we group together as people. And you're thinking about, what does that really mean?
Well, yeah, this is a fundamental point for us. This is what we're really trying to examine. I think every 10 years you need a seismic shift in your business model or your way of thinking. I did 18 to 28, 28 to 38, 38 to 48. Now my 48 to 58 is what we really want to, what we call the intangible. Why did you just walk into Harrods? Something made you walk in there and buy the stuff. And that's the really interesting point, is where price melts away, marketing melts away, distribution melts away, the customers come and find you. And that's really what we're going to focus on. How do you turn it into a proper experience? I mean, even this, you've only got 4 or 5 beds. But it becomes something else, and it's a whole heap better than what you had. Mm. And I don't know, that's what we really want to focus on for the next 10 years, is the complete environment. We're opening a restaurant in Hong Kong in February, and that I will watch very, very carefully. Not from a financial standpoint. One restaurant, it's not going to impact our bottom line, but it will really teach us, hosting something that we do pretty well anyway, i.e. winning the award in Harrods, which is a big day for us. It doesn't add to the bottom line, but it was almost like an aha moment for me to think, yeah, we are good enough. And a furniture company can mean something more than just how much is that sofa, or why are you making that sofa? So that's really, for me, the next focus for the next 10 years, and the company, is how do we turn this so it's not just another furniture store. I want people to walk away from our stores and go, flipping hell, that was fucking brilliant. I don't know what it was, whatever it was, but I really enjoyed that experience. And maybe they don't want to buy a sofa today, that's fine, that's not the point. We always give champagne out in the stores. It's not that we're pro champagne. It just means that when people come, I want them to have an experience which they don't get in a regular store. And the move to the internet is making the store experience even more important. And originally we were going to try and say we don't want to be on the internet. I mean, our internet strategy is so in its infancy. Obviously we can't ignore the internet, but the store is the core for us. But we shouldn't penalise our customers for not being able to order it online, so we'll have to wait and see how we develop that. But the next 10-year goal is to move away from furniture into the complete experience. Doing the restaurant in Hong Kong, we're doing a gentleman's club in Singapore for a partner, and we're doing the whole thing. That's everything, down to the locker rooms, the bar, the restaurant's big. It's 25,000 foot job, multi-million-dollar job, and I'm really going to watch that one closely.
Right, and that's almost like market research for you, the R&D, to see how people react to the space,
F&B,
how they use the space.
I think F&B is a key. When you talk about unique experiences, F&B is now a major role.
What's F&B?
Food and beverage.
Food and beverage, of course.
Because just furniture on its own, we're good, but it's still just furniture on its own. And, I think restaurants, cafes, clubs is a major part of building a hosting type with an interior design angle. We'll always have a furniture angle. Obviously, that's We're world class, that's what we're good at. Why would I not want to do that? But I think there's more. I feel, not unfulfilled, that's not the right word. I feel there's more for us to do and better things for us to do to give people a great experience and exposure to our brand.
They say that consumers, they fall in love with the why. Like, why do you do what you do?
It's not what you do.
Yeah,
it's why.
It's the why, and people have said that about Apple. I mean, a lot of people make electronics, but it's like, why? And can you see the passion in it? And what are they really trying to do? Make our lives better, connect us better, make us smile when we pull out advice, not just make it functional. And so many great brands, if you look throughout the years, there's a real why. You know, not that this springs to mind right now, but I think of these Jack Daniel ads that I see on the tube right now, and you buy into this whole narrative of these guys in this small town in Tennessee making this stuff. It's a global brand, and they keep it simple, and they talk about how they do these really simple kind of hillbilly things on their days off, and it makes us fall in love with the brand. And I'm wondering with Timothy Oulton, do I want to know that, okay, that's that, and this was the story behind that, and that's why you do that, and we
haven't discovered why yet.
Okay, right.
We're just getting. I mean, Harley. People have Harley tattooed on their body. I mean, it's an incredible brand. Right. I'm not saying we're going to be like Harley or anything like that.
That's hard.
But we only want 50 stores around the world, so 50 stores is not enough as a financial goal, but there's no goal to have 500 stores. That's not the game at all.
You said you wanted to be in the right cities.
50 cities.
And I've heard you say that you know, not all cities apply, as in very few cities kind of earn the right to have an Oulton store there. As in, you know,
that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it does. But you know, it sounds like you want to be in these big global cities. I mean, you look at it, it's like Amsterdam, Hong Kong, Moscow, New York, you know, London.
Yeah, we want to be in the cities where people travel to as well, because that helps get the word out. And it's not that we don't want to be in some cities. Don't want to offend people and say, oh, no, that city's not good enough. Oh. So it's not a matter of that. But you want to be in the influential cities, and we don't want to have 500 stores. That's not the goal.
Okay.
We want to have 50 really, really good stores.
Talk to me about passion and about company culture. You got that award at Harrods because the people, they're passionate about what they do. You can't buy that. You know, you can't hire that. You kind of have to instill that from the bottom.
Yeah, and we don't try hard. It happens almost organically. And there's a lady who runs the training for the stores, a girl called Jude from Manchester, who's a phenomenon. And she runs a thing in China called boarding school. So all the store managers have to come through. If you want to open a tier store, you've got to remember, a lot of the stores are not our own. They're with partners.
Yeah.
And the partners can only sign if they send their senior staff. And it's 4 days and it's intense. And they make the furniture. They denail a piece of wood, they make a trunk, they make the handle. They don't make the whole piece, because obviously in 4 days what can they do? But they get fully immersed, and it's been a real point of success for us. And people get pretty emotional when it's all over and stuff. It's quite intense.
China.
And that's been, in the factory.
Okay, you're based in China, or
yes.
you meant, and how did that connection happen? Did you always have ties there?
No, I moved there in 2004. I've been buying from China before, but I suddenly realized if I really wanted to do this properly, and it's a massive lifestyle choice, of course, you know, you're married with kids and stuff, you've got to live there, and there's no half pregnant, whatever you want to call it.
You have to be on the ground.
Just do it. And I made that decision, and I just moved there, and about 10 of us in the design team, some mostly Brits, all ex-antique dealers or related to the ex-antiques trade, but I was the one that could kind of work out how it might all be put together, because antique dealers are not the best business people in the world. They're very good at products, but when it comes to business, they're probably not the greatest.
And you moved
so that
to
was
Hong
more
Kong.
my job. No, I don't live in Hong Kong. We have an office in Hong Kong and a sales office in Hong Kong and stores in Hong Kong, but I'm based in, we don't call them factories, we call them workshops, because they're not really factories, although it's 4,000 people. It is all handmade. It's like being in the UK. We call it made in Chingland, which is a bit of a naff word, but it says what it is. It was a bunch of British guys that basically parachuted in. And we've been living there, 12 years.
Okay, not in Hong Kong.
No.
Okay.
Near Guangzhou.
Okay.
A place called Gaoming.
Okay.
Middle of nowhere.
So it's in China, but it's
a little piece of England, in the middle of nowhere, an hour and a half from Guangzhou city centre.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's a bit wild. Yeah, it's quite an experience. We have a beautiful showroom there, and we have a beautiful little village where we live now. Our living conditions for the first 10 years were pretty horrific, but the last 2 years we've improved all that.
And you moved there because of the cost base?
It was never about the cost. No, there's cheaper places. Indonesia's much cheaper. There's much cheaper places. You know, China's not that cheap. You can probably make it in Europe. today for the same price. The reason why I moved to China, because they weren't scared to add detail. All my friends went to China to take cost out of the product. I couldn't get my head around that one. I said, while I'm here, I'm going to add cost, because it can get done. No, it's not cheaper, but you can get things done. That's what I liked. And I knew what I wanted. I wanted a massive, diverse collection. Chandeliers, chest of drawers, all wood from all our tables are all wood from the UK. We ship the timber from the UK. A lot of leather, obviously, from Argentina and Brazil. We ship all that in there. And it's quite a complex, almost 4,000 people. You need a lot of people. It's all done by hand.
And you could get new detail into your furniture because the craftsmanship
more
is
extensive
there.
detail. And take the trunks, for example. The first trunks were 1,600 pins in one. 3,800 in the biggest one by hand. And that's why I loved it. China, no problem. They just say no problem. When you have a meeting, what I like about China, we have a meeting, it's done. You don't have a meeting the next day. When I was in Eastern Europe and stuff, we'd have a meeting the next day, so we need a meeting. No, we've had that meeting. We've agreed it. And that's why I love China.
Because they have a mentality of getting
just
things
getting
done.
it done.
Okay.
And I have a great partner. I've always had a great partner there who's a very good friend of mine.
Okay, that's fascinating. I didn't know that you might go there to actually get more detailed pieces.
To get more detail and
more
complex, what I call a more complex manufacturing system. Because it was never mass production. That was never the plan. We didn't plan there. When we went there, we didn't plan to sell hundreds of containers. That was never the original goal. We didn't know it was going to take off like it did. It was only when we started that it really started to take off. It was never planned. I'd love to tell you it was all just as soon as we started living there, it completely changed. Because we suddenly started making, I think, some of the greatest stuff available in the world today.
And you couldn't have done that here in England or in Europe?
I don't think so.
You couldn't have had the number of
You
craftsmen?
could take one piece and get it made in Europe. You couldn't do the whole collection. I don't think so. And I had a factory in the UK for about 10 years. And I'm very pro-British, obviously. But no, I wouldn't fancy turning the clock back. No.
Big moments in the history of Timothy Oulton. You said you didn't know you were going to be here when you started, obviously. But were there some big milestones where people noticed your pieces, or they were bought here, or it took off? When did you actually start the brand?
The brand we probably started in, I would say opening an ABC in New York was the real start of the brand, because ABC is...
Is that on Broadway?
Yeah, a really famous store. And to be in, I'd always supplied them.
Okay.
For years and years and years, but I'd never had my own brand. I know when we say we take a store and store, we employ our own staff. It's like our own store within their store. Okay. And that's a really influential store. I
remember shopping there in my 20s. I couldn't afford anything.
Anybody who's anybody goes through there. Still now, and obviously it's not, still an important store, but a lot of people have caught up. When in the mid-80s, it was unbelievable. It was the only store. There was no other store like it on the planet. But it's still a fantastic store. And I think that was probably the start of the brand. I can't remember what year that was. Maybe 2000, something like that.
Okay.
Sorry, 2010, I think we probably opened there.
Okay, so fairly recently.
Yeah, as a brand, we'd always made furniture. We sold unbranded to other people.
Right.
But I said, I don't like this. I want furniture. I want to have our own brand. And we can then put our own identity into the stores. Because when, obviously, you've seen our pillars of knowledge, for most people, that's not very commercially viable. Why do I want a 2,000 book pillar in my store? We'd just say, because it looks good. That's not probably a great answer for most retail analysts. They'll say, how much dollars per foot is it going to bring in? Not $1, but it'll look flipping great. We have these big yellow submarines that we bought ex-Ministry of Defence. We put them in fish tanks, and you press a button, it plays Yellow Submarine, And obviously, we do that because it's our own store, and we have the say, and we can. But most people would never do that because they'd say it doesn't bring revenue. But I think it does. I think it does bring revenue.
So you're all about that experience, about the way people feel when they come in your store.
Has to be, especially with the internet coming so strong. Has to be. Otherwise, what's the purpose of a store? Just go online, and I don't want to do that. I'm not saying we won't sell online, but I definitely want to keep the stores.
Okay. And when you describe to your staff, or when you were thinking, what's the way someone should feel when they walk into a Timothy Oulton store, or they walk onto that floor at Harrods? Because you pretty much own a good chunk of that floor.
Yeah, we've got
the half of it,
back area. I'd love the whole room. I would love the whole room, because then we could have more influence. What do I want people to feel? I want them to be, first of all, like, wow, what's this furniture? First of all, the impact. We call it eyes first, heart second. You want to capture them with visibility, because our stuff looks visibly strong. And then you want them to start asking questions about how it's made, and obviously then our staff come into their own, because they've all been to the workshops. They've all been through boarding school. So it's not like they're talking remotely. They know exactly. And some of them have been 2 or 3 times. And that makes a big difference. If you say, I've been there, I've made the stuff, wow, that makes a big difference. And that's why we won the award in Harrods, I assume.
It's funny how consumers get it very quickly, right? And they can smell the real deal from the fake.
Well, the consumer's so savvy now, which is a good thing, not a bad thing. You know, everyone's so well educated, the internet's changed all that.
So they can see, and they can tell when
they
look
can
at something.
sniff out fake. Fake doesn't work.
It's funny how you say, like, I've walked all around the furniture place at Harrods, and to be honest, I don't think I've ever bought any furniture at Harrods. I went and bought a bed one time, but you go in there and sometimes you just get the feeling that it's just a place where they stick furniture out, and if you want to buy it, you can. You don't feel like it's an experience. I don't feel like necessarily people are invested.
I don't think that's a reflection on Harrods. I think it's a reflection on the furniture industry. You know, all furniture stores are pretty dull experiences. Thank the Lord.
Yeah. Can you tell me about your childhood? I guess trying to convince an 18-year-old that antiques are cool is a hard sell.
It was a really hard sell.
And was your dad pushing you to get into the family antique business, or was it just to you, it felt like maybe you were going to head there anyways, whether you wanted to or not? How did that whole piece go?
No, my dad was in the army for 25 years and then set up an antique store in Manchester. And he didn't sell a thing for the first 6 weeks, so I think he panicked a little bit because he had school fees to pay. I went to a great school in Yorkshire called Ampleforth, which is a Benedictine monastery, and I did love it there. And the community aspect had a big impact on my life. And the Benedictine monks, I loved them and had a massive respect for them, and I still have a massive respect for them.
And the school has Benedictine monks there?
Yeah. My housemaster was a Benedictine monk. I loved him. He was a great guy. Massive influence on my life. Because obviously you're not living with your parents as well. And I would try and avoid holidays. You always want to go to London and do stuff. So, yeah, the Benedictine monastery had a big impact on me, on my thinking about community and stuff. And
what age were you when you went there?
I went away to school at 7, but 13 when I went to that.
Okay, and how did they affect you?
The way they would always try and press upon you, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you contribute. And that's their concept of community. They didn't care if it was sport or academics. It wasn't a great academic school. I certainly had no interest in academics. And in other schools, you'd have been kicked out for having such a lack of interest in academics. But my housemaster was very good, and he understood that. And he said, "Tim, you won't go to university," and I didn't. He said, "Just enjoy your time here. You know, just immerse yourself in it," and I did. And then do what you want to do. And then when I left school, he said, "Tim, what do you really want to do?" And I said, "I don't know. I'll go and work for my dad for a bit in the antiques." Although I thought, antiques, what are we going to do with flipping antiques? I wanted to be a playboy, you know. But funds not available. I went to work for my dad, and I remember the first year we did 15 grand turnover. That was our, it was a very small antique business. I don't know how my dad managed to pay the school fees. I don't know how he managed. He just found, by hook or by crook, he managed.
So you went back. Did you try to become a banker? Or did
No,
I
didn't
wrong?
even try. I just thought
your dream.
that was in my head.
That was the Playboy lifestyle.
That was going to be a Playboy lifestyle.
It's not all it's cracked up.
I was going to be gecko like you.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. There's an interview with Michael Douglas, and he's like, didn't anyone understand that I was trying to play gecko as a bad guy, a guy you don't want to be.
But we all loved him.
We all loved him, and every banker wants to be gecko, including me. So you went to the antique business.
Yeah, so I did like 5 or 6 years in the antiques with my dad, and then I realised, and I loved it. I used to get butterflies every day.
Butterflies every day. Explain that to me.
We used to do a lot of house clearances. You know, like seeing them like in the old films.
Yeah.
Go and clear houses, and when you pressed the bell on the door, you didn't know what was going to be behind the door, and it was very exciting. You go to auction, and I loved it, but you couldn't build a business. And what I said to my dad, I got to about 23, 24, and I was making wages, but I said, "Dad, there's something missing. It doesn't seem right to me. I need to do something that has a more permanent or a scalable, whatever you want to call it." I still had dreams of being rich and stuff. One time I said, "Fine, Tim, go into the reproduction." He said, "That's not for me." You know, he said, "He can have the business." He was very good like that. He didn't charge me anything for the business. So he gave me the business, and I started doing reproductions. Then my brother joined, and we got to like 20 million in the UK, which was a nice size.
Yeah.
Suddenly it was a scalable business. You could see away. And then I thought, well, 20 million, if I want to grow it beyond that, I'm going to have to do the really big ones, like at the time MFI or DFS. And I still wanted to make pretty niche furniture.
Okay. What was the things you said to go really big? You had to
do something like MFI at the time or DFS, one of these big ones.
Okay.
And which you can, you know.
But it's very mainstream at that point.
But it's very mainstream. Okay. That's not really the direction.
The price point goes down and quality goes down, and you don't want to be that.
Well, quality stays the same. It's to a price, but it wasn't the kind of furniture I wanted to make. So we did that for about 10 years with my brother, and then I said, right, let's start in Asia and sell to other countries, because then we can keep our niche, but still grow the business. because suddenly you've got the whole world. You're not just supplying the UK.
And you were just supplying the UK before?
At the time, just supplying the UK till 2004, till I moved to China.
Okay, and you couldn't supply the rest of the world while you were still in the UK?
No, not really. You needed to be in Asia on a full container model. Then you could turn up an exhibition, like Singapore's the big one for us, always in March. So we turned up at Singapore and put a collection together. It was just an instant.
Okay.
It was one of those instant. I'm not sure it would happen again. Maybe it was just the right place, right time. So maybe some of it was luck, but we did ride the luck beautifully.
And that was that certain one in Singapore, like in 05 or a piece where you just were instantly...
The Canton Fair, that was the first one we did, which is, if you're going to might as well put your head in the lion's mouth, you know. So let's do Canton Fair. I said, what are you doing? What's some white guy going to go and turn up at Canton Fair? No, it was instant.
That's a very Chinese...
Instant,
fair.
yeah, massive, biggest fair in the world.
Okay.
I was told it could never work.
And what were the signature items that you showed up with?
That first show, we just turned up with textiles and a little bit of furniture, but it was just, a lot of it was luck, and I think people were just happy to buy off someone who they knew had a design element. Yeah, they knew we were more expensive, but it didn't matter. As long as your quality is good enough and your product's good enough. And then the next year we came with a full furniture offer and it went again.
Okay.
So we went from like 20 million to 100 million quick. They couldn't supply it. The first years were horrendous because we hadn't planned for it. You know, we were 9 months delivery, I think. But customers stuck with us because they understood there was a culture of trying to do it properly. And I was amazed how many customers we let them down time and time again originally. Now, our service is very good.
Was it your reputation that got you through those tricky times?
We didn't have a reputation.
Okay. Did they know you'd been in the antique business for 10 years?
I don't know. I think they just loved the product. I think they just loved the product. And they understood that we suddenly come from nowhere and then suddenly the orders started to flood in. And so they kind of forgave us. But now our service is pretty impeccable, I must say, and our quality is impeccable.
Talk to me about Britain as one of the greatest exports to the world. You know, you take advantage of that with your brand. Look at James Bond, you know, as just a phenomenon, the way that the world just eats it up. I call it the Downton Abbey effect, in that all the Yanks, I mean, London Reel, look at London Reel, it's hosted by a Yank,
yeah.
right? And I'm here.
We've got you.
And 45% of my audience is in America, right?
Really?
And North America and Canada. And because they are always looking to see what's going on in London. That's why they watch Downton Abbey, and that's why they always look to Milan and Paris for fashion. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I say this tongue in cheek, and it's because Americans, they have no class. And so they always look to the best. Let me just finish. I love Americans, but they always look over here and they're like, what's going on in England? And I think that's why they always feel this sense that they're a new country and they want to see the old world. They kind of want to see what the Europeans are doing. And I think that's why great things like Manchester United export, Timothy Oulton, Bond, I'm putting you way up there. Am I way off there?
No, obviously there's an interest in Britishness, and I think from a quality perspective, I understand why we did make some great shit. And that's what got me into, when I started the antiques, I almost became obsessed with British stuff, because I used to buy French antiques and I used to buy German antiques, but there was something about the British stuff, it was just better made. I don't know, that Victorian era, there was the best materials. A lock, I know it's hard to get excited about it, but I used to play with, they're bloody beautifully made, better than I can make them now, you know, with no machines. How do they do this stuff? They were very
Was there
clever.
a lot of capital and people had pride in their work and there was a lot of money to make good things?
I think there was a lot of wealth around. They built magnificent facilities. They had the supply and distribution because of the empire. Yeah. No, they did make some phenomenal stuff. And we're an international company. We don't like to say we're a British company. Obviously, there is a British bent because 3 or 4 of the main product guys are British. But we don't want to be just British, and we don't put the Union Jack everywhere. We have the curtains and stuff, and I don't want to have the Union Jack too much. And the Union Jack, I don't think is that nationalistic anymore. It's just a cool emblem of the 60s or Carnaby Street. I don't think it just means UK per se.
It's true. It doesn't just mean that.
But the Americans have got no style and stuff, and that's an absolute bollocks. You know, I go to New York. New York is one of the places I go to raise my game. You know, you go to New York and you go somewhere like Nolita, there's beautiful little coffee shops that's not done for profit. You say it's not a chain, it's an independent operator. I'm always amazed by New York. It always makes me feel I must do better.
Yeah, no, I agree. New York is a special.
Now, New York's a one-off, I know.
Right? But when you walk into that coffee shop in Nolita and you walk in and you're like, man, I'm impressed. What impresses you? Is it the
effort, always the same thing. The attention to detail. It's not the scale. You can scale things later. But there was a little hot chocolate store me and my wife went into years ago. Bloody hell, I was impressed. I think I only sat 6 people. So I know she's not doing it for profit, because how much, but but impeccable, just beautiful. The detail, the little cookie that came with it, the decoration of the store, the way she made you feel when you were in there. I tried to find it again, I couldn't find it. I was really annoyed that I didn't write it down. I thought, I'll find it again, never did. Now, I think New York's everywhere you look, there's good shit to look at.
Okay.
It always impresses me, that city. And that's a tough audience. You know, if you're not at the top of your game in New York, you are not going to make it.
But you sell product in New York.
Yeah, we do all right, thank you.
Right.
Touch wood, touch wood.
Touch wood anywhere. And what are the cities in America do you find inspiration?
For me, the main one is New York. LA, we have a store in LA. LA's a different vibe altogether, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a different thing.
The West Coast.
Miami, I don't know at all.
Okay.
Which a lot of people talking about Miami now. No, I don't know the States that well. I love New York.
I'm from California, and people describe California as might as well be a different country, because it very much is. New York, Boston, where I went to school, is New England, and it feels that way. I mean, California might as well be a different planet. It's a different way of doing things, different way of thinking, and LA is just
it's its own thing again.
It's its own thing again, you know, very spread out. But, you know, just back to my point, I think the Americans do love to kind of grab onto something that reminds them of, you know, where they were 400 years ago, and they don't have any point of reference in America. And so when they see, you know, something Victorian designed or something like that, or the Downton Abbey or the Bond, I think there's just something nostalgic. That's the wrong word, because...
But they're inquisitive. That's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, and it's a wonderful thing. And it says so many statements that it's hard to quantify what that means. And again, you talk about how things make you feel. Like, you know, what does
but that's the key, isn't it? How does it make you feel?
Yeah.
It's the why, isn't it?
Yeah. Very hard to reproduce that. The bowler hat is your brand, is one of your
Yeah,
icons.
we picked that as the symbol because it was working class, and you know, everyone thinks it's always an upper class British thing for bankers, but it wasn't. It was a working class thing. The railroad workers in the States had it. Women in Chile still wear them.
Right.
You know, I love the bowler hat.
Explain the hat we're talking about, because some Yanks won't know what we're talking about.
The bowler hat, it's the rounded one, the
Right.
British. It's known as the British banker one. We picked the bowler hat before I really even knew the history. It was Lord Coke or something. His gamekeepers, he didn't like the top hat because the gamekeepers, when they're riding a horse, kind of get knocked off by the branches. So he wanted a rounded one that can withstand impact. And apparently the rumour has it was, I think, the shop in Piccadilly that I've forgotten what it's called. They gave him his first one, he stamped on it, it didn't break, he said, yeah, that'll do. And it went off, it became a classic. And as I say, it became a working classic. Charlie Chaplin.
Right.
It's funny how one thing can just go around the world.
Yeah.
And that's one of the few. And it's a great shape as well. It looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I love it.
It's not very comfortable if you're...
No, I've never worn one. That's
Right.
not the point.
But if you look at the pictures back in the 60s and 50s, and, you know, in Britain, there were a lot of bowler hats being worn. But and it's thought of as a banker hat now, but it wasn't. But again, it's a classic thing that you immediately think Britain.
Yeah, I like it.
What is... You know, it's fascinating because I've had artists here and I've had musicians, and I just try to think, like, when you're thinking about what you're going to create for the next few years, the next 5 years, you know, how do you start to think about where, you know, Timothy Oulton goes when it comes to pieces? I know you're thinking about the spaces now, like the restaurant.
I am, because we have most of the pieces.
Okay.
Of course, we'll keep reinventing them. That's what we do. It's more of how do I mesh the pieces together and who would want that. And obviously hospitality is a big part of that. You know, sometimes I think some of our furniture is a bit strong for domestic use. It lends itself to contract. I mean, we've got 8-foot chandeliers. There aren't many houses. You know, look, we're strong in Hong Kong. Most lifts wouldn't get our chandeliers inside. So I think there's definitely improve our domestic offer and then work on our hospitality offer. Kind of from an essence in the company, we're good at hospitality. We kind of do it anyway. I just like to do it better.
Yeah, it's very big in here, and it works well for our set because it's big. And I've thought about having some of these pieces at home, and when you come in...
You don't?
Yeah.
You don't have our pieces at home?
I don't yet. You know, we'll talk about this after the show. But I love them, but you make a bold statement when people come in. But again, you know, what is the point of hosting people? You have to think about it. I mean, if you're trying to draw them in to have an experience in your home, then maybe it is time that we take a little bit more time thinking about what that's all about. Do you think that's something that's important?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Is that something that we forget about?
Because connection's the key, isn't it? You know, that's why I always think the pub in England, the old pub in England was a great institution because it didn't matter working class, middle class, upper class. Everyone was suddenly equal in the pub. The landowner, the land worker was in the pub, in the same pub. And that's why every village had more than one. You know, it was a great leveler, but that doesn't happen so much anymore. Yeah, I do think hospitality and entertaining is massively important because it's about connecting with other people.
Do you think sometimes we've forgotten about our own home public spaces and need to rethink about the kind of experiences they do?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to get towards.
Why do you think we've lost touch with that? Is it
I
kind
don't know,
of
partly internet,
internet?
partly in the way we live nowadays. You know, a lot of people in London wouldn't know who their neighbour is. It's not just the internet, it's just been a transition over a period of time that people have lost touch with neighbourhood community. I think New York's better at it than London. People do live in their little community. What impressed me in New York is in the parks, people leave toys out for the kids.
Really?
You know what I mean? And the little little doggy can have a drink and stuff. I think New York's got a stronger communal essence than London.
Interesting. I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah, well, you would know better than me.
Yeah, there are some great little kind of small places in London, but I'm trying to think of the neighbors that I know, so I'll come back to you on that. Talk to me about the pub, because pub is short for public house.
Yes.
And traditionally in England, you would meet and even entertain there as opposed to in your home. Is that right, or is that not true?
You wouldn't entertain there so much. It was
Okay.
just the thing you did after work. You went to the pub. And every village had 4 or 5, and it was the meeting place. That's where you went. And pubs are pretty much, I don't know, pubs are having a hard time. People talk about a smoking ban, cheap booze from supermarkets, whatever the reason. But it is a loss. There's no doubt.
What is your favorite pub? Like if you walk in, or you can think about the favorite pub you've ever been to, what does it have when you go in, and how does it make you feel? Because I've been in some great ones. I've never
Yeah.
put my finger on it, but I've walked in and I've been like, wow, this feels like home.
The one from my youth was one called the Griffin in Altrincham, and why we used to go there, I don't know, but we just loved it. We went there every night of our lives, every single night, never missed.
This is when you're at
When I was during holidays.
Oh, okay.
When I wasn't at school.
Okay, coming back, this is in Manchester.
Yes.
Okay, and what's it called? The Griffin?
The Griffin. It's still there.
Okay.
It's not like it was, but it's still there.
To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonrealacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media, log in and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonrealacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there, and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.
I don't know. Who knows?
What